Hey everybody, what's going on? Zach Ryan here, and I'm with my man Jose Otero.
What's going on, Zach?
We're here to talk about a pretty major announcement from Nintendo today.
Absolutely.
Yokai Watch is coming stateside. So for those who may be uninitiated, Yokai Watch is a Pokemon-esque franchise.
Definitely you can say that. It launched initially in Japan in 2013, and it is essentially Pokemon with Japanese ghosts to an extent. So these yokai are mischievous sort of like spirits, or they're just behind a lot of mischief in the world. So let's say, for example, you're feeling down or something at home isn't working right. There's a yokai responsible for why that is. And there's a kid who basically battles these yokai to help solve people's problems, and he collects them using his own yokai to fight back. Yeah.
So that's cool. So it's got sort of a Pokemon angle, but you're fighting with ghosts instead of monsters.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's a whole collect them all sort of aspect of it. But the interesting thing with Yokai Watch is that, I mean, the game was developed and published by Level 5. It was an okay success at first, but then once the show came out and the merch came out, like this thing blew up. So much so that just last year in Japan, or the last game, which was Yokai Watch 2, which came in 2 flavors, there was like a sort of a Pokemon-esque, like silver and gold kind of thing happening there. Those games sold like 5 million copies by the end of last year.
That's nuts.
Which is, yeah, it's a huge success over there.
So you're talking about like a major phenomenon as a franchise.
Absolutely.
In Japan.
Yeah.
I also read some statistic that like the movie that opened earlier this year had the biggest opening of any Japanese film in the last 15 years. Like this is a huge deal. Over there.
But to definitely set context for folks, this is really sort of geared towards younger kids and sort of younger players. The games have RPG elements, but it is very simple, sort of like Pokemon as well. Even simpler tasks were like rotating a wheel to like charge up an attack, or like tapping certain, it's just the interface is very sort of clean, but the graphics on this game look phenomenal. Like it's a really, one of the best looking 3DS games in my opinion for the style that it's going for. But I can't help but wonder is, so the manga just got licensed by a company called Viz Media. All of this is just building, right? So that's going to be coming out hopefully this year. You have the game, which they haven't specified if it's this year or not. Then the anime, like, is this going to blow up the way it did, in Japan, or will it be the next Pokemon success? That's the big hanging question, I feel.
Right, and one of the things that I was kind of curious about is over in Japan, they've already released Yokai, Yokai Watch. They've released Yokai Watch 2, which came in 2 versions, and they're gearing up for Yokai Watch 3, which is set here in the States. So which of these 3 versions do you think they're going to bring stateside? Are we going to expect to see all 3, or is there obviously one that's maybe takes place in the US makes the most sense to release here, or what do you think?
I don't know. This is actually the best part of the question, because it's like that first game is, so all the games mechanically are very similar. The second game, like you said, was split into 2, and there was inevitably a 3rd version of the second game that had both combined ghosts, so you could catch them in that 3rd version as well. I think bringing over the 3rd one makes a lot of sense, because it makes it a little easier for a US audience. But I have to wonder if from the outset, if Level 5 was making that game with that in mind, and therefore localization has been in place, and this is going to be something that'll show up, if not by the end of the year, by 2016. I think if you bring out the first game, you're okay, but there is a lot of reluctance, I feel, on the part of, maybe not on the part of Nintendo, maybe this is just me feeling it, but that, they kind of worry, is this too Japanese for a Western audience? And, basically set in Japan with all of these Japanese elements, you can't help but wonder that. But then again, that didn't stop Pokemon at all. And that was like the late 90s. So I think that ultimately they need to embrace whichever one they're going to bring over, just 100%. Weird stipulation though, like they're already saying that like yokai are not ghosts, they're not spirits. Like there's a little annotation in the press release that Nintendo's kind of cleaning that up and saying these are sort of mischievous beings you can't see with the human eye, but that they're not ghosts, like right off the bat, which I thought was just embrace what it is.
Yeah, I feel like you see ghosts and spirits a lot, and culturally in a lot of Japanese media. So that's interesting that they would go out of their way to say that they're specifically not ghosts to a U.S. audience. And one of my other questions was, since this has become such a huge phenomenon in Japan, and the first game came out, what
2013.
2013. Okay, so what do you think the delay in bringing it stateside was? Do you think it's like you were saying, like just kind of deciphering whether or not this would play to an American audience, or
Well, I think that it's partially that. I mean, again, like to be fair, out of the gate, that first game did not fly off the shelves. Like it did okay, and it definitely wasn't until the other media properties came into it that all of a sudden, like there are kids standing in line for some of this merchandise, like you wouldn't believe. There's these collectible medals that people will stand in, kids will bring their parents and stand in line for hours to get. That work with a watch that all they do is like make noises and attacks, sort of like how Pikachu says his name over and over, like something like that, or the way Pokemon say things like that.
So there's an actual yokai watch.
Yeah, there is an actual yokai watch. There's a yokai pad that's sold out like crazy in Japan. I think it was basically sort of a wait and see approach. I think once they saw how big it got in Japan, you can't help but wonder, okay, can we adapt this for a Western audience and it'll make as much sense? And I think that is really smart. And the fact that it is only on 3DS could help them in a big way. You know, that could add new life and potentially new sales to that system. If the hottest thing that all these kids are talking about in the US is only available on 3DS and it's not on mobile and it's not somewhere else. So I think it was just sort of a wait and see, and once they saw how big it got, it became, okay, we're going to try this, we're going to go through with this, and maybe time as many things as we can after each other.
We've also seen Level 5 develop things for 3DS like Ni no Kuni, and then bring a console version as well. So that could be something to look forward to.
And that's also an example of something that I think a lot of people really cared about, but then inevitably like flopped here. Like there was a DS game that didn't get brought over, and it had like the spell book. Then you had the PS3 game, which was slightly different and built, and some people absolutely love that game, but it did not fly off the shelves even though Studio Ghibli was attached. So ultimately, this is going to be a very interesting couple of months until this game comes out, just how well Yokai Watch catches with, you know, a Western audience.
So what are we thinking, Christmas this year or maybe 2016?
I think they haven't specified, but for Nintendo, they usually don't make big announcements like this unless it's on the horizon. So I think at its earliest, it's absolutely late 2015. And at its latest, definitely a 2016 game. But if it's a 2016 game, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Yokai Watch 3 that comes over here and not the original game.
That does seem to make sense. Well, there you have it. That's the scoop on Yokai Watch coming stateside. If you want some more information, we actually have a new podcast that's premiering this week, IGN's Anime Club, and I know that they're going to be talking about Yokai Watch a bit over there. So if you feel like you need some more news, go check that out. But that's all we got for you. So thanks for watching, and stay right here on IGN.